So hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I'll be discussing the solutions to the problems of yesterday's Google Kickstart round. And yeah, we'll begin with problem A. So the problem statement goes like this: that you've been given a string S and there is a goodness score that is defined for every string. Okay, so how is this goodness score defined? It is the number of indices I such that Si is not equal to S of n minus I plus 1, where I goes from 1 to n by 2. So that is like saying that the ith character from the left should not be equal to the ith character from the right. Okay, and then what do they tell you? Then they tell you that the string only consists of uppercase letters, and you need to convert the string into another string such that the goodness score of that new string should be equal to exactly k. Okay, and for doing that you can perform certain operations. And what are these operations? So in one operation you can change any character from the given string to any other uppercase letter. Okay, so you need to determine the minimum number of steps you need to do in order to transform the string into a string that has a goodness score of k. Okay, so that is like pretty simple implementation. And what you can do is like, I'll quickly show you my code for this because there isn't anything to explain here. So what I'm doing is I've taken the input as n and k, and then I've taken the input of the string. So I'm going from 0 up till n by 2, and then I'm checking if Si is not equal to S of n minus I, n minus 1 minus I. So why haven't I done n minus I plus 1? Because I am considering zero based indexing. Okay, and then if this is the number of pairs for which this condition holds, then what I do, I need to convert the string into a form such that it has k as the answer, right? So I will just simply print out absolute value of k minus count. That is, if count is less than k, then our answer will be k minus count, and if count is greater than k, the answer will be count minus k. And why is that so? Why is that like k minus count? This is because if this is a string, and let's say these two characters are same. Okay, so this is equal to this. So in order to convert them into a pair such that they both are not equal, you need to do just one operation, right? So if this is like A and this is like B, they both are equal, right? So if this is A, this has to be A. So you can choose any of them and you can convert it to B, right? So that will take one operation and your count will get increased by 1. Similarly, if your count is greater than K, so what you can do is, if your count is greater than k, then you will have some pairs where the first character is not equal to the second character, right? So in that case, what you can do, you can pick up any of them and you can equate that character to the other character, and that will again take one operation, right? So if your count is less than k, then also the number of operations you require is k minus count, and if your count is greater than k, then also the number of operations that you require are count minus k. So instead of checking both the cases, you can simply print the absolute value of their difference, and that will be the answer for this question. Okay, let's look at problem B then. So in this problem, they have given you a binary grid that consists of only zeros and ones, and they're asking you to find the number of L-shaped pieces that are there in that grid. And how is that L-shaped piece defined? First of all, it should consist only of ones. That is, this can be considered as an L-shaped piece, right? It should only consist of ones. That is the first condition. Secondly, the condition is that the length of the smaller side should be equal to half of the length of the longer side. That is, if this is the longer side and this is the shorter side, so this condition should be true. Okay, so that is just about the problem statement. Another thing that is important here is that the orientation of this L shape does not matter. That is, this L shape, and all of this, these are like different. Okay, so these will be considered different. So yeah, that is how the problem statement looks. And the constraints on the grid are like the height and the width of the grid can be up to 1000. So you cannot do something like r into c into, I mean the squared of this. So you cannot do something like r dot c whole square. But obviously something like order of r into c or anything like order of r into c and some constant factor, let's say k, will work provided this constant is small, something like 10 to 20. So this will work in this case. So let's look at this problem like this, that instead of finding all these L shapes, can I consider my question like this, that if I am standing at a point this, and if it is a 1, then how many L shapes are there such that this point is an intersection point of that of the two segments that form those L shapes. So like if this is an L shape and if I'm standing here, so if I can calculate the number of L shapes such that this point is that intersection point of these two segments, then I can just add up to my answer those many L shapes, right? Because this intersection point will be unique for every L. So yeah, another thing to notice here is that if you have an L shape, that is, let me draw it like this. If this is the L shape, and let's say the length here is 3 and the length here is let's say 7. Okay, so what is the L shape that you can form which is of this orientation? So first of all, you can consider the length to be 2, and then you can consider the length to be 4. This is one L shape. Secondly, you can consider the length to be 3, right? Okay, let's remove this part. This is 3. Secondly, you can consider the length to be 3 and then this length to be 6, right? But then can you consider an L shape that has this shorter side equal to 4 and the bigger side equal to 8? No, right? Because first of all, the bigger side is not equal to, is less than 8. Secondly, secondly, the smaller side is less than 4. So one observation here is that if you are able to form an L shape such that the length of the shorter side is k, then you will be able to form all those L shapes such that the length of the shorter side is k minus 1, k minus 2, and so on up till 2. Like this was another condition in the question, that the length of the shorter side should be greater than or equal to 2. This is obvious because if you have an L shape, the length this should be at least 2, right? If it is only 1, then you have a single straight line, right? So how will you do this? Like if I tell you that you are here and the length of the longer side is, let's say, y, and the length of the shorter side is x. So how will you calculate the number of L shapes that have this orientation? The answer will be like, first of all, one way to go about doing this is a binary search, that you can binary search on the length of the shorter side and check if that, let's say if you are here and you consider the length of the shorter side equal to k, then you want that the length of the bigger side should be greater than 2 into k, right? This should be the condition that should hold, right? So you can binary search on this k value, and that will be like something log of r. R is the number of rows in the grid basically, or you can also call it like log of c. Like depends upon the side that you're iterating on. Okay, so this is one way to do this, that will require some log factor. But another thing that you can observe here is that if the length of this is x and if the length of this is y, so if y is greater than or equal to 2 into x, then you can form all the L shapes such that the length of the shorter side is x, right? And if this condition does not hold, then you can only form all those L shapes such that the length of the longer side is at max, or let's consider it like this, that the length of the shorter side is at max y by 2, right? So your answer for any dimensions x and y such that x is the smaller side and y is the bigger side, your answer is similarly minimum of x comma y by 2, right? So this you can do in all the 8 directions. Like this is one direction, you can do it like here, then like there are many ways to do this, right? There are exactly 8 ways of orienting this L shape. Now what you need to do, like how will you determine that the length here is y and the length here is x? How can you do this? So if there are ones here, so the length of the longest segment that has ones here is 4, And if there is another one here, you can say that the length of the longest segment that has ones to the top side are 5, right? And if you encounter a 0 here, then you can say that the longest segment of ones here is 0, because you will have to start here, right? And if you have like, I can dry run this. So if you have this segment, so the length of the longest segment of ones here is 1, here it will be 2, here it will be 3, here it will be 4, then here 0, 0, similarly again 1, 2, 3. So you need to determine this, that for every point, like if I'm standing here, what is the longest segment of ones to the top side, what is the longest segment of ones to the left side, what is the longest segment of ones to the right side, and similarly what is the longest segment of ones to the downside, right? So if you know these values, let's say this is A, B, C, D, and if you want to orient your L in this shape, then your answer in that case will be minimum of A comma B by 2, right? And if you want to orient your L in this shape, then your answer will be minimum of C comma B by 2, right? So you can consider all the possibilities here. Now in the contest, I had used a binary search here to calculate that value, which I had explained earlier. But yeah, you can do it in constant time using this formula, that minimum of x comma y by 2. And I can show you my code for this problem. So I hope I have it in Sublime here. Yeah. So like this was the part where I was doing that binary search, but this is not required. So instead of this, I can simply return minimum of a comma b by 2, assuming that a is the smaller side, right? This we have to return here. So let's see how am I calculating those maximum length segments. So first of all, I've taken the grid as the input. Then my prefix left tells me that if I'm at an index, that if I'm at a point I comma j, what is the maximum number of ones that are present towards the left. Okay. So like this is pretty simple, that this is like a simple DP here, although I haven't named my arrays as DP, but yeah, this looks like a DP, right? So you can calculate those values of maximum length segments by looking at this. Like this does not require any explanation. So here I am actually calculating my answer. So I am considering all the possibilities, all the 8 possibilities, and for every possibility I am sending my first parameter as the length of the shorter segment and my second parameter as the length of the bigger segment. Okay, and I am adding up all those values and I am simply printing the answer. So yeah, like that is it for the problem B. Alright, let's look at problem C now. So this was an interesting problem where you are given a 2D grid again with R rows and C columns. So I won't explain the problem statement because I'm assuming that you would have already read it if you're watching this video. So like you can imagine this question like this, that this is a grid and for every cell inside this grid there is a number written on it. Okay, so let's say A is written here. Let's say A is written here, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Obviously these are not letters, they will be numbers inside this grid. So what you need to do is you can perform certain operations. And what are these operations? You can go to any cell inside this grid, and if there was a number A written on it, you can increase it by 1 and make it A plus 1. And you can do this operation any number of times that you want. But eventually what you want is that the whole grid should be in a position such that for every cell inside this grid, right? So let's consider this cell. Then all the other neighboring cells should have a value such that the absolute difference of the values between my value and the value inside any neighbor should be less than equal to 1, right? So if I have a 6 here, then I can only have a 5 or a 6 here, 5, 6 or a 7. Similarly here also I can only have a 5 6 or a 7, and here as well and here as well. This is because then the absolute difference of these two values will only be 1, or will be less than or equal to 1, right? So this is what you want. Secondly, one thing to observe here is that whenever we are performing an operation, we are only adding the values, okay? So if there was a value a, then it becomes a plus 1. You are in no position decreasing the value here. You are always increasing the value, okay? So if this was your whole grid, then just consider the maximum value inside this grid, okay? Let's say the maximum value is present here. So now you tell me, will there be any benefit of increasing this maximum value? Like if this was x and all the other neighbors were less than x, will you ever be benefited if you increase this x by 1? No, right? Because if you increase this x by 1, then all the other neighbors will have to increase again, right? So that is the issue here. So how can you solve this question? You can just go to the maximum current value inside this grid. So if the maximum current value is here, then what you do, you go to all the other neighbors, all the neighbors of this cell, and you ask them what are the values that are present on them. So if this was x, and obviously if this is the maximum value, then the neighbors will have a value less than or equal to x, right? So what you will do is, if that value is already, let's say x or x minus 1, you skip that neighbor because that is not harming us in any way, right? But let's say that value is p, and p is less than or equal to x minus 2. Then you know that we are not incrementing x here, so this cell will definitely always have a value of x. So the neighboring cells must have a value at least x minus 1, right? So if this was p, you will have to increase it to x minus 1. And in doing that, what are the number of operations you will be performing? You will be performing x minus 1 minus p operations. Okay. So how will you solve it? You have this whole grid, and let's this x. So you go to all the locations that contain x. Let's say this is the location, this is the location, this is the location, this one, and this one. Okay. You go to all of them and you look at their neighbors. And if these neighbors have a value of less than or equal to x minus 2, then you increment them to x minus 1, up till x minus 1, and you add the answer correspondingly, right? Now let's say you've done this operation and all the values, all the cells that contain value x are satisfied. Okay. Now you tell me, will you ever have to check these values again? You will never have to check these values again, right? Because these cells are already satisfied, right? All the other neighbors are already satisfying this cell. So there is no point in incrementing this cell or even checking it later, right? So once you're done with x, next what do you need to find? Next you need to find all the cells that contain the value x minus 1. And then you look at all the neighbors of those values that contain x minus 1 and you bring them up till x minus 2. Then you search for all the values that all the cells that contain x minus 2 and you perform the same procedure, and at the end when all the cells are satisfied, you will have your answer, right? But if you do this whole thing naively, what will be the complexity? Like finding the maximum inside a grid is order of n into m, considering n rows are there and m columns are there. So the time complexity for finding the maximum inside this grid will be order of n into m, right? And then for performing the operation, let's say you do order of n into m operations again. Okay, for like if you find the maximum value and then you go to all their neighbors and then you do those operations. So performing an operation in our case is order of 1, but we will have to do it for many cells, right? And we will have to do it for order of n into m cells, considering the worst case obviously. So we will have to do it for order of n into m times we will have to do the operations, and we will have to multiply this by order of n into m. This is because this will be the time complexity required for finding the maximum value inside that grid, okay? But what you can do is, since we are only having to find the maximum value at every point, we can maintain some sort of a max heap, right? And that max heap will return us the maximum value at every point in order of 1. And insertions inside this max heap will be in order of log n, like log of n into m. So your overall complexity in that case will become n into m times order of log of n into m, right? So when I was solving this question, I did not use a max heap. I instead used a combination of map and a set to do the same thing. But obviously using something like a max heap or a priority queue would have been better. So I can show you my code for this problem. Let me just copy paste it in Sublime. So yeah, this is my grid and I've taken the input, and for every value inside this grid, what I'm doing is I'm maintaining a set. What will my set store? Like if I have a set, it will store it will store all the cells that have value equals to x. Okay, so I'm maintaining a map here that if I have a value x, it will map my x to a set that contains cells containing the value x, right? This is my set storing, and overall my map will map my value x to that set that will be storing all those cells. Okay, so here I am just making a set and I'm inserting that cell inside that set, and inside my map I am inserting a pair where I'm saying that the current value is x and the set corresponding to it is s1. So if that value is already present inside the map, then I only insert my pair, that is my cell, inside that same set. Okay, now what I do is, while my size of m1 is greater than 0, while my map currently still contains elements, I will do the following thing, that I will extract the set where that maximum value is present, and I will iterate on all the elements inside that set, and then for all those elements I will iterate on all its neighbors. Okay, so like these are the neighbors. So I've maintained a vector here that it will give me the neighbors by just adding the x and y values into my current value. And then what I check is that first of all, this is like the boundary condition, whether I'm inside my grid or not. Next I check that the value that is present on that particular index, whether it is less than my current value minus 1 or not. And if it is, then I have to do that operation, right? And what will I do in that operation? First of all, I will erase that pair that actually had a value, let's say x, and will now have a value, let's say k. So I will have to delete it from my map, right? So I'm deleting it from my map, and then I'm adding to my sum the number of operations that I will have to perform here. And what will that be? That will be x minus 1 minus current value, right? So this is what I'm adding here, and then it's like just inserting inside the map, and at the end I print my answer. So yeah, like that is it for problem C. Now as for problem D, I wasn't able to solve it during the contest, and I haven't upsolved it currently, so I'm not making an editorial video for that right now. But whenever I'm able to upsolve it, I will definitely make a video for that as well, because I think that the problem D was really interesting, and it was like based upon bipartite graphs. And obviously, like if you read the problem, you will never think about bipartite graphs straight away for this problem. But yeah, whenever I'm able to upsolve it, I will definitely make an editorial video for this. So yeah, that was it for this video, and I hope you guys liked this video. So in case you did, do press the like button, and obviously, yeah, subscribe to the channel. So yeah, bye bye.